In today's video, I am going to share with you how to create mist or fog with watercolor. So we're going for kind of the look of like fog over the water when, either early in the morning or during a drastic temperature change. This was a request from Diane. So thank you so much, Diane, for submitting this question. I didn't even think about painting it. So we're going to talk about that today. So I'm currently using a size 10 brush with my kind of 5.5 by 8. This is the same watercolor paper that I've been using for my landscapes recently. So you'll see this a couple of times throughout my videos. Just for the sake of consistency, I thought it might be helpful. This isn't my favorite paper to use, but it is nice that it's on a block so I don't have to tape it down. If you are going to tape it down, let's see where that goes. If you are going to tape it down, you can grab some artist tape or just some regular painting tape. I'm going to be using praline green, quinacridone red, transparent yellow, and indigo today. So I already used some indigo with a little bit of quinacridone red and praline green for the sky, but you can see that it's mostly indigo. Didn't go with any cloud sticks. I figured we'll let the mist kind of be the main attraction here today. But if you would like a tutorial on how to create the clouds, you can find that in one of my other landscape videos. I even have a very detailed video about creating clouds. So that's what we're working with today. I'll have all of the supplies linked down below. Oh, and I do have bath tissue. If you don't have bath tissue already, go ahead and grab some of that. All right, I'm going to pull up some praline green. This is very cool toned, and I'd like it to be warmed up. So it's really nice. One of the reasons I love this green is because it's so versatile. So I'm going to pull some green here, and I'm going to do something that I don't normally do with my landscapes. Maybe it's a mistake, but it's just kind of what I'm going to be instinctively following. Pulling in just a little bit of our quinacridone red that will help desaturate it and give us a nice olivey tone. So it's just not too bright. That might be a little too much. So let's pull in our other colors again. Come on, praline. There we go. And I'm going to do a little bit of kind of some foreground just to show what, so our goal is to have kind of a misty lake here. I'm going to kind of paint what's in front of it so that I can eventually just focus on what's going on over here. So I'm going to paint something going on over here. So grabbing some more water just to help spread this out. I don't have a super strict plan in place right now, except that I know I want to have some water here. But why not create kind of a fun little path to lead our eye in? I'm going to take a little more of this praline green just because it's nice and deep, and I'm just going to place that in the corners here. And I'm going to allow this to stay nice and crisp. I don't always do that, but when we're going to be adding a little bit of yellow in here, when we're going to have mist in the background, it's nice to have kind of some of that contrast of the very sharp lines and some of the softer lines. Okay, so let's now create kind of an illusion of something going in the background. Now I'm adding a little bit more water, so it's naturally a little bit lighter. So kind of giving the illusion that this might already be in some of this mist that we're going to be creating here. So cleaning off my brush here on my towel, and I'm going to, with that same damp brush, I'm just dragging it along the edge. That will kind of soften the edge a little bit. So we've got our crisp edge and our softer edges. And that contrast will help with that illusion. Just pulling that up just a little bit. So we kind of already have the beginning of our mist. And then we've got our sky. Now I'm going to kind of create the background and some trees in the background. That's just a really easy way to kind of get this effect. Let's see, I'm going to use this same color, but I'm actually going to mix these two. So again, this is mostly indigo, and I'm just pulling that into the mixture that we already have. By adding this blue in, that'll kind of cool it down, and that's a natural way for aerial perspective to kind of be pushed into the background. So I'm going to, let's go up here, and that might even be too much of that green stuff. Whoops, too much indigo. Adding a little bit more indigo just to, again, give it that illusion that it's farther back, and allowing this shape to be a little more irregular. Lots of water. We're going to pull that down. I'm going to take some tissue to pick up some of this pigment before it settles in. This is something you're going to see us doing a lot. We're going to be doing a lot of picking up with the tissue. Clean off my brush, just like we did here where we kind of soften this edge even though it doesn't want to be soft. I'm going to take my brush cleaned off, and I'm just going to run that along this edge here. This will help to soften the edge just a little bit. Something you've seen me do before if you've done a watercolor tutorial with me. Watercolor landscape anyway. There we go. Just kind of blending that in. This paper doesn't like to do that softer effect as much as I wish it did. What's wrong with you, little guy? Got some tissue on the... All right, so we've got our very background. We've got a little bit of our foreground started. Oops, sorry, bumped some paintbrushes. Now we're going to start working on some tree, like a tree line and the mist itself. Now for this step, I'm actually going to quickly switch out my water, because even though it's relatively clean, the indigo tends to stain the water pretty heavily. So I'm going to switch it out so that it's nice and clean and it's not going to muddy up what we have going on. So I'll be right back. All right, so we've got some clean water here off to the side. Sorry if you can hear one of my 2-year-olds. It's our witching hour, but my husband very graciously allowed me to have a little bit of a sanity break today. So there is some noise in the background, but I promise my children are safe. They're just cranky. All right, so I'm going to mix, I'm just mixing some of this green and some of our transparent yellow in with our indigo, kind of the mixture that we already have. It's a little too bright, so I'm going to bring in our quinacridone red. Isn't it amazing? So you wouldn't look at this and think, oh, there's a lot of red in there, but it's such an important player in this game. Okay, so we've got a good color mixed in. I'm going to grab a size 6 round brush. We're going to need that in a minute just because it's a little bit smaller. I don't know if I'll end up pulling it out, but I want it on hand just in case. And I'm going to get some tissue paper handy. Okay, this is looking pretty dry. And that's looking, well, that's a little wet. That's okay. Okay, so now we're going to work on kind of the opposite shoreline where the mist will be against it. So I'm going to take some, clean off my brush, and with some clean water, I'm just going to pull across where I kind of want that shoreline to be. I'm overlapping a little bit with what I have going on in the foreground. I have a lot of water down. I don't want a puddle, but I do have a lot of water resting on the surface of my paper. Let me change the angle and show you. Can you see that? See how shiny it is? So there's lots of water on the paper, but I don't have a humongous puddle. So I want that to stay nice and wet. If you have some paper that doesn't like to stay wet, that's where you'll kind of run into some problems with this technique, or really making mist at all. Okay, so I've got that watered down and I've actually kind of added a little bit more of a jagged, irregular edge. One thing with mist or fog, when it occurs naturally, it's going to be more dense in some areas than others. Just like when you look at clouds in the sky, there are times when it's wispy and times when it's a little bit more exact and, you know, like more dense instead of being quite so. Sorry guys, I guess I can't talk and paint at the same time. There are times with your clouds that if you're looking at them, they're going to be more dense, and other times when they're going to be a little bit more like vapor and wispy. And so that's kind of what we're trying to mimic here. So yeah, I can't talk and paint at the same time. See how that's already happening? And that's what we want. We want it to kind of bleed a little bit. Now this is a big chunk of bleed, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some tissue paper. I'm just going to dab it. You don't want to rub, but I'm going to dab it as we go. You want these to be different heights, and I'm adding sometimes a little bit more of the blue, a little bit more of our indigo. I'm going at different widths, because again, sometimes it's more dense and sometimes it's more wispy. Just allowing that to happen. So maybe this one's a little closer. That might be a little too dark, because now it looks like it might be over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my brush, I'm using the slightly smaller brush, and I'm just messing with the pigment that I already have down. I'm just going back and forth. And I'm okay with him being like a little, him being the tree, being a little bit closer. But I don't want it to look like he's on this shore. I want it to look like he's on that one. So I'm just picking it up as I go. If I'm like, okay, I want this guy to be a little more foreground, we're going to make him a little darker. I'm picking more pigment up, no more water, and just dabbing that in. Now if I want it in the background, I'm going to use a lot more water. And I'm going to let that that's like right in the middle, so I'm not going to add a tree right in the middle because that would be a little bit awkward. And let the trees be the pine trees. I mean, this is an easy technique. We're just like pulling back and forth. Very zigzaggy. But let them, don't forget to let them be irregular. If you look at pine trees, and I'm looking at some pine trees in my neighbor's yard right now, they're, you know, they'll have like bald spots. Sorry for the noises of my 5-year-old. While not cranky, he is 5. So we've got like a bald spot there that we want to allow. I'm going to take some clean water on my larger brush, just going to make sure that we're staying nice and wet here. I'm going to add a little bit more blue in, and the bluer ones, allow them to be a little bit shorter, the ones that are more blue. A little bit shorter, a little bit more in the background. A variety of heights. Now see, that's still a little dark, so I'm going to take a dried off brush and just kind of pick up some of that pigment. So see how this is, you can already see everything kind of coming together. Hi, sweetie. And you want the heights to vary. Let's let this one come a little more forward. And blue one in the back. Clean brush. Everything. And just as I'm going, I'm just picking this up. And it's okay that this tissue is getting pretty dirty. That will actually give us more of the effect that we want, especially in certain areas, because it will, like I said, it will come and go a little bit more, which is something that we are after. So I'm pulling it down here just to kind of finish this edge a little bit. So I'm pulling this down here just to bring these two together. And then kind of closing that out. So I'll be able to finish that later, but that's kind of a sneak peek at basically what we're going to be doing next after we finish more of this tree line. So I'm going to do another tall guy here. I don't want it to be exactly the same height as that guy, but let's see, make sure that this is wet enough. Should have done that before. So, and sometimes I like to work more on one side than the other. Again, it gives it a more natural appearance. So this was supposed to be a mist tutorial, but you're getting some tree and some natural painting tips mixed in there. So adding that variety is really the secret to getting it to be a little bit more realistic. So if this guy is in front, we're going to make him a little darker. I'm going to do the same thing I did on this side. I'm just going to bring it down. This is just a way to kind of finish it off. Just a touch for our viewers without kind of frames everything in. Without like completely getting rid of everything. But just so that these edges aren't a distraction later. I'm going to put one more very soft blue thing back here. Super tall guy, kind of in the back, barely any pigment on my brush, but he's back there. He's back there kind of making himself known. So you can see how we already have these layers going. I'm going to do just a little bit more of this same thing right here in the center, and then we'll come back and finish off kind of this center mist problem. But what's nice is we have this area that still is pretty white. And that's kind of what we're going for. We don't want to add too much pigment too fast, or else it becomes hard to tell if it's mist or if you messed up. So we want to keep kind of our nice dense fog area nice and dense. And so I'm going to try and make sure that I keep some of this area nice and white, but I still want to have some trees in here so that it doesn't look weird. So I'm going to pull some of this in and just complete this, and I will come back. I'm going to kind of let this be a little more dense kind of towards the center here, just to show like the irregular shape that this lake might be. So these are going to be much lighter trees as they are farther away. Okay, enough talking. I will see you in just a moment. All right, so now that I'm pretty much done with our background, kind of the tree line on the opposite side, we're just going to very slowly build up some more of this misty area, this fog. So some areas are going to be a little bit more kind of wispy and light, while some are going to be more dense. So we're going to find kind of our more dense areas and find our more wispy areas. So I've already started kind of making the areas on the edge a little bit more dense, or a little bit more wispy. So there's more of this green that you can see through. So I'm going to lay that down and then take our watercolor or take our tissue and kind of dab it up. So taking a very watery brush. So if I dab this, you can see there's not a ton of pigment on there. I want it even lighter actually. And I'm just going to start kind of building this in. So let's say it's a little bit more wispy here. Maybe even kind of touching this. And then I take that tissue and right away start picking that up. Maybe I want some that's a little bit more blue, especially over here. Whoops. You gotta work fast so that your paints don't stain your paper, especially if you're using high quality pigments. We've got that area that's a little bit a little too much pigment, so I'm just taking some water and I'm blending it up. Then I take that same tissue and just softening all those edges. So and see how it just kind of naturally comes and goes. So I'm going to add some more of this here. And then, so I started heavy and then I just lightened up, and that just kind of gives this look that it's kind of going into that misty area. Hi, sweetheart. Hang on, baby. I'll come down in just a minute. Go work on your puzzle. No, no. Okay, and now to kind of mimic water kind of going into the mist. So again, we've got our crisp lines. We're going to have our softer lines. Just going to bring this in here. A little bit more of this blue. Whoops. And same thing, we're just going to pick some of that up so that it doesn't get too pigmented. All right, I can see that my battery is about to die and my children are about to expire. So I guess I should say I can hear that. So I'm going to cut it off here. You can continue messing with it. I would love to add some trees in the foreground here on this kind of shoreline. So I'm going to do that next, but I hope that you found this helpful. If there's another type of mini tutorial that you would like to see in the future, please let me know in the comment section down below, and I promise to do it during nap time and not during our family's witching hour. All right, I hope that you're having a wonderful day, and until next time, happy painting.